Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and you're listening to a weekly podcast about books and life. Not necessarily in that order. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes or by plugging our RSS feed into your favorite podcatcher. You can find the RSS feed on our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on Spotify, YouTube, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. The show might still be on at facebook.com/Virtual Memories Show, but I deactivated my Facebook account after the Definers stuff came out, so I have no idea if it's still there. Sheryl Sandberg's ongoing drip of admissions after all of her denials makes me think that was the right move. Anyway, if you like this podcast, then please go to the iTunes store, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and a review for us. That'll inspire Apple to promote us a little. And of course, you can also promote us by telling people about the podcast on social media or however else you publicize the things you like. And if that's Facebook, I don't mind. You can support the Virtual Memories Show and get access to exclusive content with a recurring monthly donation via Patreon. Just visit patreon.com/VMSPod and set up your level of support. You'll get new material from our patron-only blog, and you'll also get to listen to my quarterly bonus podcast, Fear of a Square Planet, which features extra material from our guests and is only available to supporters of the show. So visit patreon.com/VMSPod or paypal.me/VMSPod and help me continue to produce smart conversation about books, art, comics, and culture every week at the Virtual Memories Show. I survived. Last week, I mentioned that I was running in my first race, a 5K in Manhattan over the weekend. And if there was no episode this week, you guys should assume I had a heart attack, either from the race or from anxiety the night before. But here we are. I'm glad to say I did just fine. I didn't even elbow too many of the slowpokes who congregated near the front of the starting line. Nobody warned me about that aspect of this sort of race, and it is easily the most infuriating part. I went back maybe 40 or 50 people, figuring that was about the pace I run, based on the number of people who were around. I asked one guy who looked like a veteran of this stuff. He said, yeah, it's about the right place. And then I asked him for etiquette. He said, pass on the left. And so I figured that's what I would do. It was 48 degrees and raining a lot from all the night before, and so there were a lot of puddles to jump over or sidestep or run through. And early on, the slow people didn't really bear to the right, so there was a lot of weaving and jumping off the track for a minute or moment or two to avoid a puddle or mud. So anyway, it's a little bit of trail running at the very beginning. After the first quarter mile, it opened up, and I had a grand old time. I ran 8:16 per mile, 25:38 for the whole 5K. I came in 52nd out of 505 runners overall. I came in third among 27 dudes in the 40 to 49-year-old age bracket. I did not expect that. I thought I'd be like 9 or 10 based on the time I usually run and what I saw from past races. So that was pretty neat. I felt kind of good about that. That said, it was 8:16 per mile, and given the law of round numbers, I would love to get that down to 8 minutes per mile. So that means there's going to be some more races and some more challenges like this ahead, I guess. Down the line, I'll also look at longer distances. I cannot imagine running a marathon at any point in my life. Feel free to play this episode back to me if I ever actually do that. But I consider it way beyond the mental stamina that I have, much less the physical. Still, this was a really fun experience, and there's a good measure of how far I've come in the 4+ months since I took up running. And I want to thank Kyle Cassidy, my past podcast, who browbeat me into registering for a race. He's right, it does get sort of addictive. So I am hoping to do one in a couple of weeks, and we'll see if I do better or worse. Anyway, let's get to the new episode. My guest this week is Summer Pierre, the cartoonist and writer behind the wonderful new memoir, All the Sad Songs, from Retrofit Comics. Now, Summer was on the show a few years ago in a live episode with Jennifer Hayden that we recorded at Labyrinth Books in Princeton. This time around, we sat at her dining room table and we talked about mixtapes, comics, family secrets, all sorts of stuff. All the Sad Songs is Summer's longest work at about 104 pages, and it's a really interesting memoir that uses the motif of the mixtape to unfurl stories and her memories. I've always enjoyed Summer's comics, which she collects in a series called Paper, Pencil, Life, but they're all short. They're usually 1 to 4 or 5 pages, and this new one's kind of a pretty glorious culmination of her work. She really reveals a ton about the life she lived in her 20s and early 30s and sort of pieces together the mysteries of her own behavior and the world around her. And it's the period in which she wasn't making comics in her life, which is also kind of interesting to me. So in our conversation, Summer describes herself as a writer who draws, and it's true the book has a sort of literary written vibe to it, but her drawings have gotten better and better over the years, and she employs some pretty neat graphic tools in this book, and the synthesis of the words and drawings really, really work beautifully. It doesn't feel overwritten. It feels like it was a nicely constructed memoir and just beautifully drawn. And one of the other neat draws, of course, is the mixtape aspect to everything. Summer and I listen to a lot of the same music in our sorted 20s, so I really grooved on the mixes that show up over the course of the book, and she breaks them out and actually like redraws some of the labels and stuff. Music's a big part of my life, even if I never took the plunge like Summer did and actually learned how to play and became a punk folk act or whatever the hell sort of music I would have made. But it's just good to know that someone shares some of the same soundtrack that's going through your head. And we do talk a bunch about the music that we share. I enjoyed it a ton, so you ought to check out All the Sad Songs by Summer Pierre from Retrofit Comics. Oh, and Summer's also a runner, so we talk about that a little. There's no real caveats in this one, except, just like now, I talk a lot this time around, and I tell my Big Gary Panter story at the end, which is always fun. Oh, and I brought Summer a couple of my mix CDs, and we refer to that. Anyway, here's Summer's bio. Summer Pierre is a cartoonist, illustrator, writer, and teacher living in the Hudson Valley, New York. She is the author of the graphic memoir All the Sad Songs and the autobiographical comic series Paper, Pencil, Life. Her other books include The Artist in the Office, How to Creatively Survive and Thrive 7 Days a Week, and Great Gals, Inspired Ideas for Living a Kick-Ass Life. Her writing and art have appeared in Pen America, The Rumpus, The Comics Journal, and the Nashville Review, among other places. And now, the Virtual Memories conversation with Summer Pierre. So last time we recorded, live session 3 years ago.
Right.
Now we're just sitting in your dining room.
I know. Hi.
Doing a one-on-one. I would ask what's changed, but we'll get to that. First, tell me about All the Sad Songs, where it came from, and whether it was even in your head 3 years ago when we last recorded.
It was not in my head at all 3 years ago. It kind of was underground. I can see it start to the material. Anyway, it's a memoir essentially of music, and it starts through the framework of going through my collection of mixtapes. I am of a certain generation, as you are, that a certain vintage, shall we say, that collected music through mixtapes, and they're like these little memory capsules. So that's where I started from. And I did a story about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, that was about a mixtape, and it kind of had a little life to it that I felt like I could just keep going. And Box Brown, who was part of Retrofit at that point, wrote me and said, "Hey, you want to do something with us?" And of course, I love them so much, so I said yes. And he's like, "It doesn't have to be too long, 25 pages." And at that point, I'd only done 5 pages, and I thought 25 is a nice stretch. I'll go towards it. And I'll do something funny and nostalgic about love and friendship through mixtapes. And 8 months later, 104 pages in, it was a very different beast.
How did it evolve for you? What was the moment you realized it was going to grow far beyond what you thought it was going to be?
Well, I did an initial draft. Like, I'd pencil things out and sketch things out, and that was about 30 pages. But I could feel that there were other things coming up for me, and I was really resisting them. I mean, essentially, I've never had an artistic experience like this before, where I kind of would show up to the page and material would be waiting for me. And it was sort of unfolded organically like that. And I went to places I did not want to go. I actively was like, no, I'm not going to write about that. And then sure enough, a week later, I'm writing about that. So it was really an intense unfolding process of creating, definitely.
How did your visual style... Well, how did you adjust your visual style to it? Because I know some of the pages are in the more familiar sort of autobiographical, cartoony mode that you have, and others, there's more graphic, I don't want to say design, but there's more structural, formal, I guess, elements to them. Was that something you would, well, the fact that you're saying interesting tells me you weren't thinking of that consciously.
No, I mean, it was very organic. It was very organic. I mean, I think... If you're familiar with my older work, like Paper, Pencil, Life, my autobiographical series, which is all short pieces, people have said when they've read all the sad songs that, it's such a departure, you know. And I think by style, that's what they mean by style. Paper, Pencil, Life is way more scratchy, way more sort of from the sketchbook. And this one I was like, I want to take time every page. I want to see what I'm capable of. So I did it page by page out of the sketchbook for the first time ever. And I think it evolved in that way. And I realized, I think you can see it in the book. I just started getting more comfortable taking up more space, letting words kind of guide me in how I design things. And I wanted to sort of expand visually what I was capable of before.
Yeah, how much is the writing prefigure the drawing?
A lot. Basically, I sketch out and write a rough, and then when I go to ink, I edit as I go, essentially. But the framework of the writing is already there. Yeah, when I start inking.
And how difficult is it to edit after you've?
It's so intuitive to me. Yeah. I don't know. It's funny. I almost forget about it. I just finished a very long piece for the NewYorker.com. And at first I had so many drafts and I was like, is this going to work? And then I'd start inking and then it would start editing itself. And it was perfect for that. And I remember I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what I do. I forget. I write a bunch of stuff and then I edit as I go. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I would say, because it is something we talked about in our live one, but people might just be listening to this for the first time. Cartooning influences when you were starting out versus the influences you see now in your work?
Oh, interesting. Well, I guess I read and drew comics a lot when I was a kid and a teenager. And I stopped for a long time, for like 20 years, and went back to it when I was 40. And it's interesting to me because once I picked up cartooning, I could see the DNA of everything that I'd read and been interested in before. And I definitely see Jaime Hernandez in my work. He's definitely in my DNA. Hergé, Tintin is absolutely in my work. But I think those are definitely influences in terms of style. But I really think of myself as a writer who draws. So pretty much the taproot of everything I do is writing. And so a lot of my stuff comes from poetry and from literature. I'm a big Joan Didion fan. She was definitely an influence on this book. Eileen Miles is another one. Just a lot of writers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you listen to your mixes while you were working on this book?
A bit, yes, I did. Yeah, I got a tape deck, and I have I picked out my husband's old Walkman, which was great to get out. And it's just, you want to be careful because they are, at this point, some of them are 30 years old and they're fragile, So I would listen to some, and most of the time just looking at the song titles was enough to really be like, oh yeah, I remember that, and just looking at the lists was definitely, which I draw actually in the book. You can see it, and it's definitely a part of the memory trigger that happens.
Yeah. Did you keep copies of your own mixes that you give out to people, or
No.
were you like me, a micromanaging control freak who just kept a catalog of everything he'd provided? Because that's what's really behind mixed tapes.
Yeah.
In some respects,
Right.
I want to share this, that, and the other.
Totally.
But I want to curate someone else's experience of music in a way that,
Well, it's not only curating, but it's also like, I want you to enjoy this, but I want you to enjoy me making this.
Again, you're controlling their experience.
In some ways, it's a self-portrait. I really think that it's a combination letter / diary entry, and that, I mean, I think that what I remember, I have some mixes that I kept for myself, which are like diaries, but I also when you read the book, you see, like, I just know what I was listening to. So there was a period where I didn't make mixtapes for myself because I didn't have to, but I totally remember the lists of songs that I made for other people. Absolutely.
Again, an actual notebook, really.
Yeah.
I kept all those from the
believe it.
80s onwards. Yes, because I'm insane.
Yes,
that's why.
That's 100% accurate to Gil. You can tell a lot by how people make mixtapes, what their personalities are like. Yeah.
With the CDs, like the ones I gave you, you'll notice I didn't actually give you the list.
I know.
Because God forbid you know what's coming in advance. This way you can play and actually listen.
Yeah.
So.
I actually just got a lovely mixtape in the mail from the cartoonist Tim Bird, who's in England. And I didn't look at the songs because I wanted to have the experience. And it was so fantastic. Yeah. So fantastic. And it was good. It's such a relief when you get a tape that's good. You're like, oh, thank God. Yeah. Okay. I don't have to be polite about this.
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't had a chance to listen to that yet. Or my deck broke.
Yeah, exactly.
How tough was it finding a audio cassette player besides your husband's?
Not that hard. Okay. Target has a lovely mini boombox. Okay. So I didn't need the double tape deck like I used to because I'm not making mixes. But yeah, it was. I could find it.
And you didn't become a vinyl collector at all in this new resurgent era.
No,
My theory behind that, by the way, is all those kids who are collecting that stuff now. When they finally leave their parents' place, they're going to discover exactly why we went to CDs and then to the digital. They're going, oh my God, these things weigh a fucking ton.
Exactly. My stepdad is a huge album collector, and so he has an entire room filled with albums, and I'm just waiting on that. Yeah.
And you figure
I'm going to get that at some point.
He's also not moving
exactly
from place to place.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, there's a degree of the...
Yeah.
We moved to those other media for a reason. It sucks because we still love the old style album covers.
I know.
But,
so beautiful.
But we also love not having to get up every 20 minutes and change a side.
Although that's part of the thing, I think that's
we're old and lazy now. So.
I would do it, Gil. I would do it. But
when I recorded with Bob Parker, this 90-something-year-old artist up in Connecticut, he's only got like a 45 player.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
And gets up and changes sides every so often. I'm like, you're 90-something years old. Maybe we get you a little digital
45?
collection of that. Yeah, he's playing old 45s.
Okay,
this is the radio, and then he gets up and changes singles. I'm like, okay,
that dude's hardcore. That's all I gotta say.
If it's keeping you young, that's great, dude.
Yeah, that's hardcore.
Now, a big chunk of the book is also about your music, your songwriting and your music performing career. Yeah. And you did the folk singer-songwriter thing for a number of years. How does that differ from comics making? Or what similarities do you find between that and comics making? Yeah,
it's interesting. As soon as I started making comics, like I said, I came back to it when I was 40. It felt so familiar to me, like songwriting. It really did. I think anybody who makes a one-page comic knows that there's a rhythm, a beat to it. And I just felt like when I draw the panels, it's like laying down the track, and then the words come in their lyrics. It's a very similar feeling to me. And I wonder if that's also why so many cartoonists are musicians, because there are a lot out there. But
are they any good?
I don't know. I think that's beside the point, isn't it?
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Only because I'm judgmental and an awful person.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the differences in that respect in terms of being in front of an audience and getting the immediate reaction versus writing, publishing.
I think, I miss performing, definitely. I love performing. That part, the social part of it, going out and being on stage and being with other musicians. That part, especially now in this internet world where it's such an insular, in a strange way, where like we're connected but alone at the same time. And when I made this book, I sort of was blown away by what an active life I had. I was out 5 out of 7 nights a week, listening to music, playing music, going all over New England and driving in all these towns and meeting people all the time, and which is an extremely different experience. When you're a cartoonist, you're alone in your studio, and that's it. You know?
That's what I'm sort of wondering, the contrast of the immediate audience interaction versus maybe I'll hear back from someone. With the internet, at least there's comments, which is a double-edged sword. But
you know what the internet's like. I mean, people... The thing is that you make work, you're alone in it, and you send it out. And if you're lucky, people order it and want to buy it and all of that. And that part is thrilling. But if you're even luckier, you'll hear something. Yeah.
Now, the other question is, the thing I run into periodically, oh, I love where you said this. And it could be an episode from like a year and a half ago that the other person just listened to. And I have no goddamn idea what they're talking about. People citing work of yours that you're like, I remember.
That has not happened to me, but it's funny. I feel almost embarrassed because I think my trajectory in comics has been, I started out so rough and scratchy and kind of, I call it the kamikaze form of making comics. You dive in, do it, get it done. And now, of course, my work has matured. It's a lot more detailed, and I get embarrassed. I go, oh, yeah, that comic. Right. Can you skip ahead? Because I'm actually a lot better now.
Oh, I have that too. Trust me. My early episodes, I just cringe over audio quality and things I didn't know how to do, like faking human empathy. I mean, having a normal conversation with people. But even so, your timeline for doing this book's 100 pages in 8 months. That's still, I don't want to say kamikaze, but that's faster than a lot of indie cartoonists. No, it was
white-knuckled acceleration the entire time. I mean, it was very fast.
Did you feel you needed to keep that momentum?
I actually was on a deadline. And like I said, there was like 25 pages. And then I was like, oh, I need more time. And so finally, Jared at Retrofit, one of the good things that happened was that Retrofit got involved with a real distributor. And so then they actually had to have a real publishing schedule. And I adore deadlines. I work well with deadlines, and they really sort of set me free. So I think one of the things...
That is the secret reason for why the show comes out every week.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, it sets it free. You have a goal, you have a wall, you got to get it done. And so for something like this that had this sort of accordion effect, it was stressful because I was sort of like, I missed deadlines and I go, this is not me. I'm such a deadline person. And then finally, when he gave the final deadline that it actually had to be done, it was long enough that I could get it done, but it still was a real haul. It was a real push. Mm-hmm. So, the good news is that I got it to him a week in advance because it was around Christmas time and my son's birthday and then Christmas. And so I had to get it done. But it was also print ready, which I guess in the comics world can be a little challenging. People tend to send the book, but it's not print ready. So I got it done, baby. That's all I got to say. Yeah.
Was hand lettering the pages with the mixes on them more difficult than the regular cartooning? Okay.
So much easier. Yeah. I actually started there with the first one because I was like, if I just get my hand moving, I'll start doing the rest. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And did you have those Proust memory time bombs?
Yeah.
With the music?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that I talk about in the book, and I'm such a... music is, if it was a sensory experience, it's really a smell. It brings on these real body experiences. And I think that's why people use them with Alzheimer's patients. And it's like this body memory that comes up, and it's its power, and it also can be its pain, Yeah.
Talk about somaticism, which I don't think anybody's said in an interview to you previously.
Yeah.
Because a somatic therapy. Well, a chunk of the book is about mental illness and mental health. And a somatic therapist sort of guides you to a kind of epiphany, or at least a method of treatment.
Yes, a method of treatment that works. Through. Yeah.
Talk about the body.
Talk about the body. What do you want to know? I don't know. What should I say? We store, at least I learned the hard way, that the body is the messenger for trauma and happiness and memory and all kinds of things. And so I think, music for me became a real way to process memory through my body, because I could sustain memory through it, feelings through it. But, as you learn in the book, it was, I had PTSD, so I was really out of sync. And other people use alcohol or drugs to sort of regulate their body and their feelings. I used music and love to do that. And so
I wouldn't say love so much as relationships, but
or intimacy, attempts at intimacy, I would say. And to sort of regulate my moods and my feelings. And it wasn't until I actually kind of hit rock bottom and found a therapist that could resync the feelings versus what was happening in my body. So, is that sort of what you mean?
Did you know the book was going to be a mental health
No, dear
thing
God,
in
no.
the slightest? And how difficult was it for you to open up about that?
It was really hard. I avoided it like the plague. It's complicated. It's extremely, so narratively, I couldn't get my mind around it. It also was something I hadn't even really shared with most of the people I knew. I have some close people that I talked about, but it's sort of hard. And you see it in the book. I talk about how, my personality, which can be friendly or, I don't know.
Outgoing,
I guess, can mask a lot of things. And I think when I was in the midst of PTSD, I would try to say, this is what I'm going through. And people would be like, well, it sounds like you're doing great now, And I'm like, sure, okay, yeah, we'll go with that.
For 40 years.
Yeah. So, it was kind of the secret story I had. And like I said, the book came out organically and I really didn't want to cover it. It was scary to cover it. It was scary to experience those things. I had a lot of memory flashbacks when I was doing it. I had to sort of practice a lot of, get back into sort of physical practices in order to keep going. But then what's interesting to me is I went there and I talked about it. I was able to talk about it, which I think in a way that's not confusing or vague. And the memory of it is a lot less sharp. My memory, it's almost like I had a place to put it. And so I no longer remember it as clearly as I did. And the other thing that kept me going was just how isolating the feeling of PTSD can be. And I just thought about somebody else struggling with it and reading it. And I've actually had a couple people say, this really means a lot to me to be seen in this way, and that could almost bring me to tears thinking about somebody else feeling connected in that way.
Yeah. Besides people sending you mixes and this, how's the response been so far to the book?
I think it's been great. Yeah. I mean, I think it brings up a lot of feelings for people. It's, I think the nostalgic aspect of it.
You have to explain to younger people what a cassette is.
But actually, no, because when I went to CCS, the Center for Cartoon Studies, while I was making the book, and some of the students there who were 20s, asked what it was about, and I started trying to mumble my way through this, thinking, "Oh, you kids aren't going to get it." And they're like, "Oh, we love mixtapes. They're again like vinyl. They're coming back. It's just funny." And they're like, "They're so rad." And I was like, "Stop using rad. That's from my time."
Even that was nostalgia back in the 90s.
Stop stealing from your elders. So I think the response has been good. But I think also when you describe it like, "Oh, it's about mixtapes," it kind of gives you this false impression that it's just a nostalgic thing. It's not. Which
is what I thought it was going in.
Exactly. It's what a lot of people think it is. But it's really about memory. And about the power of art to sort of narrate our lives. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How did your family feel about this? Your husband, stepfather, etc.?
It's funny. I haven't heard. My stepdad read it and loved it, but that's all he said. Yeah, my husband has not read it yet, but he's been through and he knows what it's about. He knows he's in it. And he knows it's dedicated to him. I think it's one of those things where he wants to have a private experience with it, but he's thrilled for me because he's seen the journey of me as an artist. And I think there was one point, especially when I was in the PTSD section, I was creating, and I suddenly just said to him, and he was asking me how the work went today. And I said, I just realized I just don't want to hold anything back. And he goes, I have been waiting for you to say that for 15 years. So he's thrilled for me as an art creative person. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you have the long form bug at this point, or are you content to go back to shorter work for a while?
I have been doing short work for a while. I don't know. I do want to do a long form. I just don't. I feel sort of like used by the muse, I guess. Like I said, it was such an intense experience. I feel like I got spit out instead of the book, and so there's no way I can duplicate that experience, but it definitely has made me curious. So like, what's next? What's something that I can spend some time with? I miss it. I miss the process of being completely immersed in work for months at a time. It's very intoxicating. And, it was definitely one of the most satisfying experiences artistically that I've ever had. So I miss it in that way. And I do plan to do more long work, but right now I'm still in the short form. But all my short form, which used to be 1 to 2 pages, is now 5 to 10 to 15 pages. I mean, that's what short is for me now.
Do you find yourself fighting off the urge to, this could go to 30, but that puts me in no man's land?
No, I think I'm so impatient. I think that's one of the things that I struggle with, especially in this internet world. I just want to get something done so I can go on to the next thing, and that was a struggle in the book I just made. But I like the 15 pagers. I like the 12 pagers. I don't know. I think those pieces for me are so experimental in nature. So it's more just like, I'm curious, where does this go? Not like how I can push it, but where can it push me?
Yeah. Who were the autobio cartoonists for you? I mean, when I was coming up, college years, it was when you had the Toronto triumvirate. You had Seth, Chester, and Joe Matt. And then there were other ones who, came up around that same era.
Yeah.
Were there particular autobio people? I know you also have Linda Barry as a big influence, but
huge influence for me. Yeah,
she's sort of beyond autobiography. She's creating her own genre of
although 100
comics.
Demons is definitely one of my favorite books of all time. But like, who are the people that are sort of
particularly within the autobio space?
I mean, Gabrielle Bell is amazing. I think she's as good as it gets in terms of autobio and, I don't know, literary comics. I'm really interested in comics that you would call literary.
How do you characterize that?
Intimate, detailed, heavy writing.
Are you snobbish and elitist? Because people say that about me all the time.
Probably. No, I love Lulu. Are you kidding? I love Lulu comics. But I don't know. I love Seth so much. I love Gabrielle. I love Kyla Roberts. I'm trying to think of the last thing that just blew me away. Oh gosh, Lauren Weinstein's Mother's Walk.
Oh God, I haven't read that yet. You sent me the PDF, and I just hate looking at things on screen.
No. You got to experience it on paper. I told her, I said to her, she's been doing this a long time and gone through many different roads, and I feel like there is no one to touch her right now. I think she's on fire, and it's funny because her work is so originally hers, and I don't feel drawn to, I don't know, occupy the space that she's in at all. But I'm totally inspired by
you can be
fire.
Inspired, but not wanting to do not pastiche, but influenced by.
I think she's asking interesting questions about the experience of women, that what's okay, what's cool, and what's not, and all of that. That is new in a way that I didn't think could be new anymore. Yeah.
Is that territory you want to?
Women?
Yeah. And motherhood and the gestalt of that and making art.
Somewhat. I have a complicated relationship to it. My mother was a stagehand for 40 years in the rock and roll industry, and as a result was an absentee mom in a lot of ways. She's an intense person, and I would love to make a book about her. I think I don't like writing stories about my son's experience. I think that's something that I've been negotiating for the last couple of years.
Well, when we had, you mentioned Kyla Roberts already, and when we had our live conversation, it was also with Jennifer Hayden, who made some hay by exploiting her children in comics. So I can imagine you want to, I'll step back a little.
Yeah, totally. I think that's the thing, because Kyla and Jennifer Hayden and then my friend Glynis Fox have all done beautiful, funny, interesting work about their kids. But I had an experience where I started out recording my days with my son, and I still value those comics and I still enjoy them. But unfortunately, I have to be vague in this situation, but something happened with him that I started putting into comic form, and it suddenly just hit me. I'm like, this isn't mine. This isn't my story. Sure. And so after that, I got really, Gus is a part of my story, but I never record his story. So I have a very specific line. And I also just feel like there has come a point where a woman of a certain age sort of is put into a gutter of mommy this or mommy that, and which is very dismissive. And I feel like it immediately pigeonholes a voice that I'm not interested in being pigeonholed in. I want to be more exploratory, and I don't want to be a category. I want to be in the fold. Yeah.
What do you wish you asked your mom?
God.
At least in terms of if you're going to do a story about her or a book about her.
How much time do you have, Gil? It's such a giant subject. I mean, she was such an intense, complicated person. She lived many lives. She had secret children. She had secret pasts, rebellions. I mean, lots of the stuff that I sort of spent my life trying to get her to talk about. And I think what's interesting to me is that when I thought of myself as being her biographer in a lot of ways my whole life. And then when she died, it was so shocking to find out how little I actually knew, you know?
Yeah, how did that stuff start coming out? Yeah. Without giving away details that could be potentially shameful to family members.
No, nothing's shameful at all. It's
there wasn't any sort of moment of, Summer, there's something you need to know about your mother.
Many moments. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like one of the stories that I would like to talk about is when I was 9 years old and discovering she had been married and had other children that I didn't know about. And who I now know, that we all gathered around at her deathbed and became completely thick as thieves. We became immediately sibling-like. It was really interesting.
I had a guest in his 50s who discovered there's a second family in his 50s.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I can't go into any more details because we talked about it off mic, but it was one of those where he just had, that changes the entire context of my life.
Exactly. In the way that also death does too. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like this entire, I mean, I knew stuff, but then when you meet the people and you're like, wow, I met her first husband. I mean, it was just like this crazy, I felt like I was meeting some of the great fictional characters of my life. You know, it's true. It was so fascinating. And she also was like a pathological liar, you know, so like, it's just, there's so much material.
So even being able to ask her some of these things would not have guaranteed.
No. Yeah. I mean, she was the great bullshitter of my life, you know, which is hilarious on one hand and maddening in another.
Oh, right? Yeah. The stories I tell about parenting that people just, Gil, why would you act like that was normal? Because that was normal growing up. That's just what it was like. And this is what we put up with. And now we look back and, oh, my God, that was incredibly damaging. But, you know. Yeah.
I think I would ask her more about her career.
Yeah.
You know, because
she hated Mick Jagger.
She hated rock stars. It's funny. There's certain people that she liked, and it was always like, wait, you like them? You know, which it said a lot. But she did not suffer fools gladly, and she had seen it all. And I mean, she'd been on tour with everybody from, Black Sabbath to David Bowie. David Bowie dedicated a song to her at Wembley Stadium on her birthday. Okay.
What song was it? Do you remember?
I don't remember. See, that's the thing. That's the stuff that you go, I should have wrote that down. I was 12 years old at the time, you know? So, she lived a giant life. I would ask her more about her work. I have one of my favorite memories is being with her in Rome at a bar she built underneath the Rolling Stones stage, handing out screwdrivers to people when I was 18, you know. I didn't drink, and I didn't know how to make a screwdriver. And she's like, she was so proud of me.
But they were all so high, it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter. So, and she was so happy. It was like, and I think the one thing I did ask her right before she died, I said, I feel like that was the happiest you ever were. And she said, yeah, that was definitely, that tour, that time of my life was the happiest I ever was. Yeah.
How about you? Happiest in your life?
In my life right now.
Of course.
Yeah.
At a table with some schlub from New Jersey.
That's right. This is just a dream come true.
I finally hit the big time.
Yeah. Yeah, this is it.
And you're not able to talk in the slightest about what you're going to do next, right?
I'm working on the next issue of Paper Pencil Life. I'm about 2/3 done. I'm trying to finish that up. And then I think I want to try to do a larger project. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You do more work in color? You've done some digital color stuff, which is interesting because you mentioned the Hergé thing, and you do tend to you get rid of the lines. You do much more clean line.
Yes, I don't do the crosshatchy.
Yeah.
So to let the color sing. Yeah, I just did the Comics Journal, Cartoonist Diary, and I was like, let's do it in color. Let's see what happens. And it was so fun. It was so fun. And so I think I said earlier that I just finished a very long comic about Sylvie Plath, and that's fully in color. So I'm more interested in color. It takes a lot of more time, and it takes a lot more computer memory, which I have a laptop, so that's an issue. But
you still draw on paper, though, right?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Okay. I will never stop doing that. Yeah, but I mean, comics, like I said, shorter pieces for me are about experimentation. Hey, what happens if I do it this way? And so I'm still interested in that. The experience with the Comics Journal, those comics were 6 panels as opposed to the 9 that I normally do. And they were in color. And I thought, God, it'd be so great to do an entire book like this. It'd be so beautiful. It'd be so fun, So yeah, I definitely, color is definitely something I'm experimenting with.
Just like with deadlines, do those sorts of constraints also help in terms of productivity, knowing you've got 6 panels?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, that's a perfect example. Like we were talking about the songwriting, and the beat and the comics and how they all work. I mean, I had never worked in 6 panels before, and I thought, I'm going to try that. And it was great. It was a nice, perfect setup. And then I had a little punchline at the end, So rhythmically, it really affects me. Yeah. I'm a big believer of deadlines, boundaries, small constraints to get set work free. Yeah.
Like having to put out a show every
Absolutely.
week. Perfect. Although occasionally they go 2.5 to 3 hours long, depending on how verbose the guest is.
Edit it down.
No. I let Jerry Moriarty go
I know you did, big
length.
guy. I know you did. Yeah.
Yeah, that was at that point I figured, I don't think anyone's actually recorded something of this length with him before. So
he was psyched. Yeah.
Although I found out after the fact, I said to the publisher at Fantagraphics, who was friends with Moriarty, that, he's living up by himself now in Binghamton, doesn't really know anyone up there. So, he kind of just went on. He's like, oh, no, Gil, Jerry did that back in New York also. You didn't get the, any sort of desperate, lonely Jerry. You just got normal Jerry. I'm like, oh, okay. You could have warned me. But, that's again, as long as I'm plugged in and I've got space on my memory card, I'm good.
Yeah.
But, in fact, when we talk about digital and storage and all that, before we started recording, we talked a little about the infinite jukebox idea. Now, when you talked with the CCS students about cassette tapes and the whole analog world, I'm sure they think that's novel, but, to us, there was an era where you couldn't giving somebody a mix meant you were giving them music they never would have been able to find on their own.
Totally.
As opposed to... hey, you should listen to this, email someone a name, and they just go click whatever streaming service. Yeah. How's music changed in that respect, knowing that you can just get access to all this stuff we used to have to hunt down?
Well, I think it's the same relationship I have to the internet anyway. Everything's so available. And so if I go, hey, God, remember that song when blah, 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 or I hear of an artist, I just Google them or go into the streaming service that I use, and most times I can hear something. But I get sort of overstimulated by it. And I actually, after I made all the sad songs, I was like, screw it. I'm just going to get CDs again. I'm going to do it. Because there's so many modes to hear music, and I hate that Apple makes you buy your albums again in order to hear them on your phone, all of that crap, that I finally was like, screw it, I'm just going to streamline it. And And so it also stopped me from listening to albums. You know, it's all by songs, you know, and I love the relationship of an album. I like, you know, it's not to say that they're not made anymore, but people don't listen to them anymore, you know, as a one piece. And they're like a book, you know, they have a whole rhythm to them, a whole cultivation to them. And I miss that. So I go in and out of like, I'm going to be analog forever. And like, oh, but I really want to hear this one song. And, I mean, the internet helps me discover new music, but I stay with it when I have it in my hands.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. We have the one of those Amazon Echoes at home, and I've got the Amazon Music thing. Yeah. So instead of, you know, playing a song in my head while I'm washing dishes or whatever, I can just turn and say, hey, the Echo, hey, play blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, it'll be, you know, a song from our 1980s childhoods. I'm like, hey, I want to hear that Tears for Fears song. No, the third B-side. Yeah. That's the one that I want to hear. So,
totally. Yeah.
But again, there's that weird sense of being able to just get access to everything. Yeah. Where once upon a time we had to hunt for things.
Yeah. Well, it also, you forget it more easily. It doesn't have the same life with you. You know, it's more a part of the atmosphere, but I don't know if you remember this, but just music lived with you. And that's something that's so part of my book. You know, I wanted to write about what it was like to have music live with you. And, you know, it was in your car and it was like in your room late at night, you know, all of these things, you had this entire relationship to it. And now it's way passive. It's very passive. And it's not to say I'm totally a part of it, but it's less meaningful and less, it's just not in your body as much.
Well, it's a weird trip. Yeah. It's something I tend to do when I'm traveling, especially in foreign cities. Yeah. I still keep an iPod because I'm old school.
Yay,
old school.
I love that that's old school.
It's in my car actually right now because it's a thing that I keep plugged in. So there's 30,000 tracks there that'll just keep shuffling around.
Yeah.
But I would walk around cities I don't know with that and headphones going, so that years down the line when song X crops up again, it's that's when I was walking through Milan in this
I do know
thing.
you
so you still get those musical and you know, sensory time bombs.
I agree.
I suppose.
Yeah. But, it's interesting that you say that.
Engineer that.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because I run and I walk to music, but I also draw, you know, do a lot of illustration. And when I'm done with the drawing, whatever I'm listening to immediately is embedded in the lines. Like I look at the drawing and I can feel whatever I was listening to, whether it's a book on tape or a New Yorker podcast or even songs. It's interesting. It is built into that. Yeah, maybe it's another way of remembering.
Talk about running.
Running. I'm such a terrible runner. I'm so slow, but I love it so much, which I never, ever thought I would
When
be
did
a
you
runner.
start? I only started 4 months ago,
I know.
so that's my trying to figure out other people in there.
I was 41 when I started, which, by the way, is humbling, because
47 for me.
Yeah,
so,
no,
you know,
but like your peak is gone, right? Yeah. Your physical peak. So there's a lot of things that I learned that I. You know, like I'd get injured or whatever, and then it would take longer for me to build my strength again, you know. But I don't know. I can't run during mild months because I get a weird heat stroke very easily. So right now is perfect. It's winter, fall and winter and early spring I love running. I love running in Arctic temperatures. It's amazing.
2 miles yesterday morning and 9 degrees.
Yeah, so did I. I did 3. I did 3. It was great.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it hurt like hell at first, but then it's great.
Well, I walk for 0.3 of a mile and then start.
Yeah.
But, that was trying to figure out the layering to protect against 9 degrees.
Oh, man. Fahrenheit. I get so many great insights.
Yeah, that's my next question. What do you non-consciously think of when you're running? How does it help with the art?
It definitely helps. Sometimes I'll even, if I have a problem with work, something that I'm working out, and this happened when I was making the book, I'll go, okay, let's just run with it for a while. And a lot of times, you know, thoughts will come and go, but it'll usually unravel it in some way. Again, it's an interesting, back to the body. It's an interesting processing place. And I get ideas when I run.
That's the next question. How do you hold on to those?
How do I hold on? I go home and I write them down immediately. Okay. And if they're gone, oh well. But I tried doing the phone thing. I'm so paper and pen. And
you'll trip over yourself trying
no,
to
totally.
prattle into the phone while you're out on the road.
Yeah, no. It's bad. So, but yeah, I write them down as much as I can. But yeah, I don't know. I am a huge, as someone who's been a slug her entire life, running to me has been a great miracle. And it's also just been this eye-opening thing. I think everybody should be moving their body to get the good ideas going. Yeah. Don't you feel that? Do you feel like you get insights? And
I don't have ideas. I'm the most boring guy in the world.
Nice try.
One of my great moments, somewhat early on in the first 2 months, I realized that I'd done like 2-3 miles and had zero thoughts about work.
Right.
So that was my, hey, that whole thing. I had absolutely no thoughts about that whatsoever. I just thought about, distances and, making sure I got past the next mailbox. And
it feels great. Yeah. It's like this purging. I feel like it's this purging. I remember seeing a tweet by Mark Maron. He said, I'm going to run my hate away today. And I was like, yes, you are.
But deep down, he's never going to run his hate
It's a bottomless pit of hate. No, but I've been there when I've been in a shitty mood or like having anxiety. I mean, running and walking are just powerful to purge yourself and clean yourself out. Yeah.
Have you become accustomed to the new space? You moved into a new house just a few months ago. Yeah. When it comes to working, are you?
Yeah, I had a half space in our old house. It wasn't really a contained room. So I love having a room I can shut the door, and I love the view of my trees, and it's great. Are you kidding? I feel it's almost like, wait, I was never in here before this? I can't believe it. Yeah.
But for a compulsive artist, sometimes you find reasons to, the angle of the light isn't the same. I need to move my desk at 3 degrees more to the window. And
I definitely, I'm actually waiting on a drafting table from my grandfather, but if I don't get it soon, I'm going to get because I have a door now that I use as a desk, and I was going to get another door. Like now I really want like the full big space where I can put my scanner on one thing and printer on another and have just open-ended space. That kind of thing I love to adjust all the time. But yeah, I don't know. I like being surrounded. It's like a world you enter, and I love it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are you better at as a cartoonist?
Than
when you started this phase of cartooning, not the teenage stuff, but
I think drawing. I think I'm way better. Mm-hmm. I think I've gotten a lot better. I think my patience is better. I don't know. I just feel more grounded in general as a person and an artist. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if you were to make a mixtape nowadays,
what would I put on it?
Yeah.
Well, it depends for who, Gil.
That's true. You don't have to seduce a guy anymore.
I don't. I don't. I don't know. I would put lots. I have so many favorite songs. If it was like.
That's a question. Do you do nostalgia music or do you do contemporary?
I do a mix. I do a mix because I still love collecting songs. I mean, that's great. Like there's this one song I put on every mixtape right now, or mix, like Girls in Trouble. Androgynous Beings. It's such a great driving song.
Oh, I was thinking of Romeo Void. Girl in Trouble is a temporary thing.
Oh, yeah. No,
yeah, because my life was defined when I was 12, apparently.
Yep. Yeah,
I go stupidly far back sometimes.
I don't know. I listened to, when I was making this book, I listened a lot to Gillian Welch and David Rawlings, and I just got obsessed with them. And it's funny because when I was in the music scene, everyone was obsessed with her, and I was just like too punk rock for her. I was like, that's so boring. And then, but I kept Time the Revelator all these years, and I put it on when I started making this book, and I love them so much. I cannot even express how much.
I listened to that record the first time on 9/11.
Oh, my God.
Thank you. I was in a Borders on Route 17 in Paramus. I knew about the record.
Yes.
Played it on the listening station, just the title track.
Yes.
And just numbly walked up to the front counter, bought that, and that became the soundtrack of my life.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Like, that's such a visceral memory that you have.
I told my wife, if you have a memorial service for me, play I Dream a Highway. Just put it on repeat, 15 minutes at a time.
Oh, God, I love that song so much. I Dream a Highway. Oh, my God. Yeah. I mean, that album is amazing. But all of their albums are so good. So, like, it was funny. People would ask me, well, what are you listening to in making this? And I'm like, Gillian and Rawling. Yeah.
Have you ever seen them live?
Never.
Oh, God.
I know.
Oh, it's something. Yeah.
I love them so much. Yeah. So I'm still, and actually through them, Tom Waits is also, he's quoted in this book. I also just go through these phases of just listening to only Tom Waits, and through him.
You don't drink.
I don't drink.
That's what I find interesting. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, neither does he anymore.
Yeah, well.
But yeah, as he said, his wife said, "You've drank enough." But he's one of the great artistic thinkers. He's my favorite artist of all time, of any medium. And making this book, I read a book of his interviews and just made song lists. That's a great thing for internet, right? And so through him, I discovered so many great blues artists. And yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of old fashioned now. I like jazz and blues and, I don't know, music from the hills.
We had the folk thing and that kind of...
It's funny, though. I came to the folk thing only because I had an acoustic guitar. I was so punk. I was so rock, And so the folk world would be like, you're too rock. And then I'd go to the rock world and they'd be like, you're too folk. But that's where I came from Riot Girl and all of those places. And so I did get into the folk scene, but the real folk music, I'm only now getting into. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it was just too quiet for me. I wanted the riot, and of course now I hear all of it and everything, right? Yeah.
And we're old and our hearing is going, so,
Yeah. Yeah, and we need stuff that's older than us to make us feel young.
Slightly. Last question.
Yeah.
Freak out moments around your comics idols?
Oh, freak out moments.
You did mention, I think, going to a class with Linda Barry once.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, but seeing your artistic heroes and melting down?
I think I'm trying to remember the one time I melted down. It's interesting. So the Linda class I took, now it's 12 years ago. And I signed up for her class because I thought it was a meet your new best friend Linda Barry class, but it actually was a writing class. I know. And I was like, oh, that was a huge rude awakening. And especially because she was so controlling, I think for that very reason, like she didn't want to know your name. And that was shattering. It was sort of a necessary shattering experience. And so it burned me. I've really had to recover from that. But the good part of that is everybody who I've met, I felt really comfortable meeting and just been happy. I'm like, you exist. Thank God I'm in the same room with you. I think,
didn't have the Chris Ware meltdown or anything weird?
No, I'm trying to think of what would be, I think Gary Panter, I did have some knock-kneed moments with, and I emailed him by accident because my stepdad's name is Gary. So I was like bugging my stepdad for something, and then Gary Panter writes me back, and I'm just like, why is there a Gary Panter response? Oh my God. And so he's like trying to respond to my question as if we are in conversation, and I'm just like, the sweat is pouring off of me. And I was like, oh my God, Gary, I thought you were my stepdad. I'm so sorry. And he was like, oh, thank God. I thought I was having a senile moment.
Those exist too, but
yeah, true.
Did I ever tell you my meeting Gary Panter story?
No, what is it?
Well, I was 25 years old. I was working for Juvenile Merchandising Trade Magazine, and I was covering the licensing fair at the Javits Center in the city. Yeah. And you get these big exhibitors like Sony and Fox and all that, and so they had all these properties to license out, and the attendees are the guys who want to license these things. So I had interviews set up for all these juvenile products with these big name brands. Yeah. And then I had time, so I just go wandering up and down the halls looking at the other booths, and I see Gary Panter, LLC. This is mid-'90s. I'm, again, 25 years old.
Right? Yeah, you knew who he was.
Holy shit, Gary Panter.
Seriously.
He looked at me like I was about to serve him a subpoena or something. I'm like, holy crap, dude, I'm a huge fan of Jimbo.
That's
and he
amazing.
Just, oh, thanks, man. And we spent like 2 or 3 hours that afternoon talking.
That's
and,
so good.
I was done my interviews. Whenever people came by to his little stand, I would leave and all that. But the long version of this is I was there for 2 days. And I had told him about pretty much the only comics that I had bought in recent years from like the big two were some Marvel reprints of old monster and horror comics by Kirby and Ditko and Wolverton. He's like, oh, man, those sound great. And I said, well, I'll be back tomorrow. I could bring those if you want to check them out. Would you? That'd be awesome, man. So I bring them in, and he takes them and thanks me and says, just so you understand, it might take me a while to get these back to you. I have this pathological thing about the post office. And I was like 25, first artist I'm ever meeting.
God.
I'm like, okay, that's weird, but whatever. That's your
Welcome to
Gary
art.
Panter. I brought my copy of Jimbo with me also for him to sign. So months go by. And I get this envelope in the mail, and it is completely festooned with drawings of panels from those comics. And I'm like, oh my God, that's why it took him a while, because he was drawing this stuff on. And I scanned that and got it at home still. It's this wonderful thing. And he sent the comics back. And we bumped into each other on and off over the years. But a few years ago, we were at a museum retrospective together. And I mentioned this to him. I was like, oh yeah, I come across that when I Google myself, that because you posted it on Flickr. Yeah, man, the line in the post office was so long that day. This is all I could do. I'm like, you drew those from memory while you were standing on line at the post office because you're a friggin' genius.
That's Panter.
And I'm just some schlub from New Jersey.
But he is the sweetest man.
Yeah.
He really is an amazing. I mean, he's so brilliant and so cool, and yet such a nice guy.
Indeed. And I'm glad you get to be part of this community.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Yeah.
Summer, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Gil.
And that was Summer Pierre. Her new book is All the Sad Songs from Retrofit Comics, and it's wonderful. Visit her site, summerpierre.com, to check out more of her comics, order issues of Paper Pencil Life, learn about her comics e-course, and see some of her new work. And that's SUMMERPIERRE.com. Just Summer Pierre. She's on Twitter as Summer Pierre and on Instagram as summer.pierre. And she also blogs regularly at summerpierre.wordpress.com. And that's got some of her neat haiku comics and other stuff she's working on. And after we wrapped, I asked Summer, so, who are you reading? If you want to hear her answer to that, you'll need to become a supporter of the Virtual Memories Show so you can get access to our quarterly bonus podcast, Fear of a Square Planet. The third quarter episode features book recommendations and some extra conversation with Moby, Audrey Niffenegger, Mark Ulrichsen, David Lloyd, Glenn David Gold, Ken Krimstein, Hal Mayforth, Lance Richardson, and Nathaniel Popkin. You can support the Virtual Memories Show via patreon.com/VMSpod or paypal.me/VMSpod. I've got all sorts of goals and goodies in place for patrons, including that podcast, patron-only blog, handwritten show notes for every episode, my secret project, and more. So go to patreon.com/VMSpod and support the art of fine conversation. And I recorded this episode at Summer's home in the Hudson Valley. It was maybe $1.50 for the toll on the New York State Thruway, but that was it. Oh, I also brought along a pie from Auntie Elle's in Tuxedo, New York, as is my wont whenever I'm going to pass that way when heading over to a podcast. If you want to help defray some of the costs of the Virtual Memories Show, like web hosting, travel, equipment, coffee and pie, or just toss me some money because you think the show is worth it, then visit patreon.com/VMSpod or paypal.me/VMSpod and make a one-time or recurring donation. The special thanks go out to Joe Caruso, Michael Hacker, Michael Janizik, Paul Karasik, Fred Kish, Jonathan Kranz, Jack Lescamella, Teresa Lewis, Stephen Nadler, Payne Prophet, Dmitry Samarov, Stephen Solomon, Craig P. Steffen, Greg Tanner, Ford Thomas, Noah Van Sciver, and Garrett Zecker for going over and above in their support of the Virtual Memories Show. We have the full list of show supporters at chimeraobscura.com/VM. Our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with our annual guest list episode, where 2018's pod guests tell us about the favorite books they read this year and who they're hoping to read next year. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. That'll help us build a bigger audience. You've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and you are awesome. Keep it that way.